it's fair to say that you guys would trust the scientific method as a much more accurate way of telling what's true than the historical method.
I would say this instead, close to what you just said. I would say I don't use faith in any aspect of my life. So to create a thing where I'm having to go and use faith, I don't see.
Okay, we are recording.
We are live.
Hell yeah.
I'm your biggest fan. I have listened to every one of your podcasts at least once, and some of them twice. I bet there's no one else in the world who can say that.
That's true. We
Not
should
even
send you a
us.
shirt. We'll send you a Millennial podcast shirt.
And I know the show always starts with, and we are live.
And we are live.
No, we're not. No,
We
we're
never
really
mean to
No.
do that. It's just like an
We
instinctual
will always
thing.
start like that.
I like it.
So, this is the Millennial Experience podcast. I'm Luke Adamson.
And I'm Eddie Ambries.
And today we are joined by an extra special guest, and this is my brother, Micah Adamson.
Micah.
That is true. And first, let me defend my millennial credentials. Did you know that millennials are literally named after me? People who were scheduled to graduate in the year 2000 needed a name for this new generation after Generation X, and they named them the Millennials. But since then, there has been much questioning. If you read the Wikipedia article on it, you can see that people born in 81, 82, and 83 are not accepted as Gen X or Millennial by some. But I'm born in 81, and if Millennials are named after me, I'm definitely a Millennial.
Yeah, I've heard inconsistent numbers too, because I heard anyone born 1985 to 1999, but it seems to be that last 20 years of the century there.
So,
Yeah,
we'll count it.
thank you.
Yeah.
So I was wondering about that, if we should just only have millennial guests, because I feel like that really narrows our audience.
I think
we're the
yeah.
millennials, and we're doing the experiencing of whoever is
right.
on the podcast.
That's right. But no,
So-
having millennials on would be kind of an interesting thing, seeing as we're going to start hearing our music in the stores now, and managers are going to be our age, and people running stores are going to be millennial people.
Mhm.
So it'll be like a millennial world for at least for a little while, until the next
Yeah,
generation.
and I this is the very first presidential election I've been eligible to run for president in.
Oh, cool
So-
as fuck.
Yours
Oh.
will probably be next.
Yeah.
I decided not to run this time, maybe in another 4 years.
Next
but-
one, Micah.
Just
Yeah, the next
too,
one.
too busy.
Yeah. Right now, there's a lot of crap going on you don't want to be blamed for.
Yeah, I don't want- I'll just sit this one out, kind of armchair quarterback it and make a lot of negative comments, and it'll be easier that way.
Yeah,
I'm just
you
afraid
gotta-
that's how.
Just make sure you're posting a lot of trash talk on Twitter, and you'll be the next president,
Yeah.
no problem.
Nice.
So, do you want to tell us what you do for a living to start this off?
Oh, this is a question that's almost as hard as, so where are you from? Because
Well-
I grew up all over Washington, and then I've lived in Bolivia for 4 years, Ecuador for 2 years. I've been back in the Seattle area for 10 years, and I, for a long time, had spent more of my adult life living outside the U.S. than in it.
That's cool.
I still feel awkward in social situations because I don't look like it, but I'm a Latino on the inside, and I'm a white guy on the outside.
How much Spanish have you learned, Micah?
Mucho.
Mucho español.
En realidad, soy fluente en español.
Oh, eso está muy bien.
Yeah,
Sí se
mi
escucha
primer
bien.
trabajo por Microsoft fue ofreciendo soporte técnico en español para España desde Microsoft en Redmond. I'm going to say that in English. My first job working tech support for Microsoft was working. Wait, you should prove that I actually spoke
That
Spanish
was
by
completely
translating.
and totally right. I 100% understood that, and that was all correct. Yeah.
My first job was working tech support in Spanish for Spain from Microsoft in Redmond on the night shift. So
He lived in South America for a
Yeah.
lot longer than
did you
did.
did you get used to the S sound as an S, or did you hear it a lot as the TH with the Spain?
those Spanish people, they always talk like this. It was really embarrassing, actually. The first time I was on the phone, my very first call, somebody called in and they were spelling their name to me. And I have to like be able to put their name into the system to find them. And they were spelling it with an uve. I said, "There's no letter called an uve. Do you mean a B grande, or I mean a
B
B
chica,
grande,
or
or a B pequeña? No, an uve. You mean a double B? A W? No, an uve. I'm gonna have to put you on hold for just a minute." And I turned to my Spanish-speaking colleagues and I said, "What is an uve?" They said a UV. In Spain, they call a V a UV instead. So,
Oh, why? Come on.
so there you go.
Are you kidding me? They keep it simple in Mexico. Yeah.
Yeah.
They just keep it simple. They added the double R and the double L to the alphabet, so you can get those sounds, the R and the A
So
sound.
every sound just.
But
has
every
its
sound
own
just
letter.
makes the one sound, one letter, one sound. Yeah.
That's
There's
cool.
no A, ah. There's no O, ah, like ah, and then ooh.
Spanish is 99% phonetic. That means that if you see a new word and you know the rules of pronunciation,
just sound it out.
99% of the time you can say it the right way the first time.
Yeah, it's pretty simple. Yeah, it's pretty sweet, right? Like,
It is.
Yeah.
It's easy to read in Spanish.
Yeah, I
Like,
think it's similar. To
definitely.
But they decided to make up for it for complexity with conjugations because
yeah.
everybody gets their own ending to every verb in every tense. To be perfectly honest, that's why English is an international trade language. You get 4 endings for all verbs. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
It's very true. It makes
Our
a lot
spelling
less
is
sense.
atrocious.
Jumping, jumped, and
Jamped. No.
would be jump.
Have
The
jumped.
one I never figured out was swim, swam, swum.
Swimming.
Yep.
Oh,
Yep,
wait,
swum.
swim,
So that's the past perfect,
swum.
and that is going out of use. Like in almost all cases, you can just use past tense. We're even simplifying from 4 to 3 now.
Yeah, that's what it
Yeah,
seems
the
like.
past
4 to
perfect
3
is
seems
going
like
away.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. Awesome.
So Eddie,
Yeah.
can I feel like I know you through Luke, and now first person from the podcast
Yeah,
for the
yeah.
first time.
I mean, I
and-
think I saw you one time at the house.
Yeah, I think we've met.
You were visiting, and it was just chance because I never saw you again. Like
Yeah.
only your pictures.
Yeah, so you
Yeah.
come up in a lot of Luke's stories and a lot of stories about Luke from other family members, but that's about it.
That's great. Yeah, no,
So-
I think he comes up with a lot of my stories all the time too. Yeah,
So
Luke
on the
and
last
Chandler are out of my
podcast-
mouth, yeah.
On the last podcast, you were talking about how you have siblings that are like 10 years younger than you,
Yes.
and I imagine that the way that Luke and I have grown up is probably like that, but you're the big brother.
And
in-
it's-
Except they've all shared a
Yeah.
bedroom.
So I would
for
be
their whole lives.
Yeah, so technically
Wow.
age-wise, I would be you, and Luke would be my little brothers. The only thing is, I grew up with them because we've stayed in the same household. But my 2 oldest brothers actually did leave, and my oldest left when my youngest brother, my little brother Mike, was like 5. So that would have been a lot more similar of a situation because growing up with your siblings obviously is much, much different when you're interacting with them daily, stuck with them
Yeah.
all the time.
Mhm.
But otherwise, yeah, there's a gap there, and yeah, it is sort of like that. How many years do you guys have in between?
10 years.
Oh, it's
so we
10
shared
years.
a room for the first 7 years of Luke's life.
Ah,
Yep.
okay, yeah, no, and yeah, 7 years. But
I was just
that's young. That's young though. and, yeah.
So Nintendo just released Super Mario All Stars, which is like all the original old Mario games remastered.
I already pre-bought
And
it.
watching the like little trailer of Super Mario Bros, the one where you first get to like ride on Yoshi and all that stuff. I remember us playing that game together, and like
Yeah.
being able to be Luigi was so cool for me.
That's awesome.
I was
Yeah.
so honored just to be able to be Luigi.
Dude, that's so cool.
You'll always be my Luigi.
Yeah, so I have 2
I
little
never
ones.
answered your question about what I did for a job. I was just realizing that.
No.
But
You
I
said in
changed
Spanish
the topic
you had
to something more fun.
Oh no, yeah. You explained in Spanish a little bit of your Microsoft background.
So that's the complicated is that's only half of my life because I'm also the main pastor, the senior pastor at my church. So for 7 years, I was full-time at Microsoft and part-time at my church, and now I am part-time at Microsoft and full-time at my church.
Nice.
So I preach every Sunday. Today's Saturday, and we're figuring out how to do church this week in the middle of a pandemic, and now a dust or a smoke cloud.
You have a smoke cloud outside?
Yeah, we do.
What?
The whole West
isn't
Coast
even-
is on fire.
Wait, where are you right now?
Washington State.
Oh, I thought this dude was in fucking South America right now. God
no,
damn
no.
it. Okay, you're in
Todavía
Washington.
no.
Okay, estás en Washington ahorita. Okay, eso está muy bien.
Así es.
Yeah, awesome. Okay,
Yeah.
and there's fires all the way. Oh, god damn it.
Yeah.
This
it's
isn't even
really
a
bad.
secondhand smoke from Canada. Like sometimes we get that, but this is like actually us. So.
Damn.
We've had a kind of a huge cloud of ash falling from the sky here for the last couple weeks too. I think it might be a Utah fire though. I don't think the California fires have.
Made it that.
There was
Yeah.
one up by Grand Junction in Colorado too that was.
Was that the
blowing
one that we
smoke
got
at
like a
us.
few days ago that was just covering the sky?
I think that was Utah. That was a Utah fire. But if you look at a map, like an infrared map of the West Coast right now, it's just all on
Purple?
fire. Yeah, it's not good.
Oh no.
So you've been the pastor of this church for how long?
So I've been an associate pastor here for 7 years, and the senior pastor for 4.
Okay, very cool.
So that's a while.
So I'm really glad you're on the podcast because you're my favorite religious person to discuss religion with. It's always such a great conversation, and even though we have very different views on the whole thing, I like the way that we communicate and the way that we're able to discuss these things.
I
Because
agree.
I've noticed that your style of debating these things is very different from like, let's see, like a Ken Ham or what's that Australian or the guy from
that
New
was Ken Ham.
Zealand that
That's really good.
the other New Zealand guy that says that
Oh, the banana guy.
yeah, he says that he knows there's a God because a banana is
wait.
perfectly shaped to be eaten and held.
I think he apologized
open.
for that later on.
I don't
Yes, he now
probably
says that was a joke.
Convenient.
What's his name?
That dude is a funny guy.
Ray Comfort. Ray
Yep,
Comfort.
you got it. Yep, you got it.
But I don't, how they kind of just go, well, the Bible says so, so therefore it's true. Like, I like that you and I, when we talk about things, we can actually like dig through the arguments and try to follow the logical conclusions to their ends. So
I was reminded of that listening to you guys' last show, that a lot of the critique of what you guys call organized religion, what I would probably just call Christianity, is I think you're valid that there's some really bad logic in that Christians use, and I want to call out members of my own team when they're using bad logic. But to be able to come to a conclusion, you need a valid formal logic, and then the facts that you plug in have to be true in order for the conclusion to be valid. So you can have, if A equals B, then B equals C, then A equals C. That's a valid formal logic.
mm-hmm.
But if the fact is that A does not equal B, the whole argument, it doesn't matter that your logic was good, the facts that you plug into the formula make the conclusion wrong.
And that's a syllogism, right?
That's correct.
I would only say though, if we're gonna say A to B is fine and then B to C is fine, so A to C is fine.
Uh-huh.
I would just be careful about how many letters are gonna go in between the first and the last, because there's a slippery slope argument there easily.
So what's an
It's better to simplify your arguments, isn't it? If you keep it simple, don't have. Are you referring to the way that whole worldviews go together? So, like, if I just said, if there's a God, then I don't know, some policy issue, then I don't know, abortion is wrong,
No,
or
that one's
something where
similar.
like
I
there's
would-
so many missing steps in
I
the
would,
middle.
yeah,
of those
I would say
things.
more like if there is no God, then people will just rape and pillage and go crazy.
Okay.
I think that's a crazy slippery slope there, seeing as we already have sort of a hard time identifying where
But
God is.
just to start, like, do you know what a syllogism is? Like a real formal logical formula? Can you give like a textbook definition or a textbook
Yes.
example of if A is
Yes.
true and B is true, then C must be true?
Correct. Okay, so let's see if we can do this. If let's see, all dogs bark. Well, that's a bad example. Sorry. And this thing is barking. Then it must be a dog. That's a bad example. Let's see. All dogs bark. This is a dog. Therefore, it barks. That is a correct way to form your logic. If it's true that all dogs bark, and it's true that this is a dog, then this dog barks.
Oh, okay. Sure. Yeah,
But the
just
way to-
solidly confirm each one. Yeah.
But the way to scramble that is to say all dogs bark. This thing barks. Therefore, this is a dog is not good logic. Because you didn't say dogs and only dogs bark. There could be other examples of things that bark that aren't dogs.
Yeah. I get that. So another one I think I remember is if I sleep for 8 hours, I wake up refreshed. Therefore, if I wake up refreshed, it means I slept for 8 hours, which may or may not be true.
That isn't true, but that doesn't have to be true because you didn't say if I sleep for 8 hours and only if I sleep for exactly 8 hours, then I wake up refreshed. Yeah, you don't know. So there's logic and then there are facts that you fill in. That both the logic and the facts have to be accurate for the conclusion to be true.
Right.
And I think a lot of times when I'm talking to other Christians, we agree on the truth at the bottom of the syllogism, but the work for how they got there, I completely disagree with. So, you can have bad logic with a good conclusion.
I see. Yeah.
It doesn't, if I say, as long as your conclusion is true, it's true, even if your logic was bad getting there, but you can't convince anyone of it if your logic is bad.
How do you feel about the Kalam cosmological argument? Do you know William Lane Craig's?
I do, yes.
Do you agree with his logic there?
So first of all, the Kalam cosmological argument is a Muslim Kalam apologetic for the existence of God. And it's fascinating to me that Christians use it. So can you think about that for just a minute? That Christians and Muslims agree on the Kalam cosmological argument.
Yeah.
That doesn't make your head explode. There are other people whose heads just exploded. Do you want to state the Kalam cosmological argument?
I don't know it word for word, but it's something like if the universe came to exist, or if the universe began to exist, what's the second premise?
If all things with a beginning have a
creator
or a source, all things with a beginning have a creator or a source. The universe has a beginning or a beginning. Therefore, the universe had a creator or a source. Is that
that about sums it up? I think. Yeah.
Right.
Basically,
does that bank on the absolute fact that anything that has a beginning absolutely needs to have a activator behind it?
Yes. So that's the test case. So I speak 3 languages. I speak English, I speak Spanish, and I speak a little computer language, which is true logic. The computers are always testing for if A is true, then put this on the screen. If B is true, put that on the screen. And the condition that you're testing for has to be true or you don't get the result that you want. So computers really do use formal logic to function. So yeah, your question, does it rely on the premise being true? Yes, you can't, if you can prove that the premise isn't true, then the conclusion doesn't follow from the premise. So in that statement, the question is it true that all things with a beginning have a creator or a source? And if that's true, and you can prove that the universe had a beginning, then the universe needed a creator or a source.
Right. What if we're confused as to what looks like a beginning may be a crest or a wave?
Yeah, I think my argument with the Kalam is
It's
that
really hard to see past.
we don't know for sure if the universe has a beginning.
Okay.
I don't know if there's a way to really, at this point, see that far back or determine that 100% accuracy. So I can't even agree to the first premise just like with 100% certainty that all things have a beginning.
And I think that logic also creates a problem for a god too.
It doesn't, because of the careful addition of only things that have beginnings need a creator. So
right, but again, we aren't sure if the universe, what we would call the Big Bang, was its beginning or just another fluctuation.
Right.
Either way.
No, that you're right. And what we're doing now is the kind of conversation that you should be able to have with someone if you're going to have a conversation. The setting up a careful syllogism like this, we can now talk about the pieces, and we can at least understand why we're disagreeing with each other, instead of me just saying, it's obvious, there's a world, therefore there's a God.
Yeah.
No,
Well-
word. I think the biggest difference there because you could easily say, if God doesn't need a creator, neither does the universe. I think there the difference is going to be whether you want there to be a purpose to your life or whether it doesn't matter to you or not. You can have the universe as the origin. You can have God as the origin. God is going to give you a little bit more special treatment. There's a brain there that's thinking about you, who's worried about you. But with the universe, it's really just us in our own decisions. I think that's the biggest difference.
This is really interesting to me. From your guys' last show.
Actually, can you hold on 2 seconds? I just need to reset the camera because it's about to shut off.
Oh, shoot.
Yes.
I'm going to start a GoFundMe for your camera. So we can get a fucking badass one, man.
One that records for more than...
Yeah, so we don't interrupt Micah. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, go ahead, Micah.
Okay.
And we're back. So 2 things, really quick, back to the Kalam cosmological argument, and then I want to make a comment from your last, what Eddie, you just said about wanting there to be a creator. Subjective, we have a subjective response to facts. You can like a fact or you can not like a fact. You can wish that a fact were true or you can wish that a fact were false. And it's reasonable to ask what someone wants because we're going to be more likely to try to twist the facts to what we want. Mm-hmm. But would it be true? So what you just said is that that thinking that there is a God is something that people want to believe. It would make your life have more purpose and meaning. If there were a God, it would, at least for believers, religious believers, they have skin in the game wanting there to be a God. They feel better about the universe thinking of it as having a God in it. Is that true?
Yeah, I would say the feeling, that the sentiment we're going for is that there's someone in charge taking care of things. For example, in chimpanzees, their hierarchy system works exactly the same as ours, and we don't see that it's suspicious that the way we formed our political hierarchy is the same way we adapted heaven to work too, where they have a hierarchy, which doesn't make a lot of sense, having a hierarchy in heaven under the assumption that, you have God up there who's all-knowing and all-wise, and yet we decided that heaven is structured like our hierarchies. And so I think it's because we are so used to having that person on top and need that leader there is why it's easier to fall back on a creator with a mind and thoughts.
When's the last time you read the Chronicles of Narnia? Like all 7 of them?
Oh, I never
You never
read
have?
that. No,
Okay,
I mean, as far as long text like that, it's I've done The Gunslinger, which was $7, and The Lord of the Rings, which was just 3.
But finishing The Lord of the Rings, that's one of the longest, when you add those 3 together, that's one of the longest pieces of literature in the English language.
It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I couldn't get into it.
It was so much fun.
I've tried to read The Hobbit twice, and I've made it about halfway through both times, and been like, I can't do all these songs, all these like silly songs.
I would argue The Hobbit was better than the first Lord of the Rings book, which had a ton of extra story at the beginning.
In that case, I probably wouldn't enjoy
like,
the Lord of the Rings book either. So,
dude, once you get to the second book, you're just like, everyone's killing each other. Anyway, sorry, Micah.
Why did you bring up the Chronicles of Narnia?
Because the argument that Eddie was just making, in the silver chair, they're underground. They're in this underworld, and there's this witch who has enchanted them to believe that there's no overworld, and they're trying to give evidence for how there is an overworld. And so they say, well, we know there's a sun. And she's like, what is the sun like? Well, it's like that lamp on the ceiling there. And she's like, so you're just taking something small from the real world, this underworld, and making a bigger, better version of it up in the real world. And every one of the arguments that they make, she just argues that they're projecting a world, her world, small object into a bigger, better, idealized version. So their response is, to talk about God, who's Aslan is the lion in this, and she says you're just copying that off my cat, and all of those things. But the issue is that argument, it's possible that the little things in our world we are imagining as part of a bigger, better world, but it's also possible that it can go the other way around, that we've made lights because the sun exists. We get the idea from the big to the small. So just because there's a big version and a small version, ideally, you can't tell which direction it's going. So the chimpanzees, it's true that our society looks like chimpanzees, but is it that our society looks like chimpanzees, or is it that chimpanzees look like our society?
I don't think they have a Bible, though, so I don't know where they would get their hierarchical ideas.
But they exist. The lamp doesn't have to know about the sun for both of them to exist.
Right, but the sun is arguably real, and if we're trying to make God real, that's a little bit harder to fit into the.
Because we can point at the sun.
We can point at the sun and be like, that really is
measure
right there.
it, test it.
It's heat. It affects us. It makes plants grow.
But in Narnia, they couldn't. They were somewhere where you couldn't see it, and that's the idea. Is that no matter what, we're in a spot where we can't see directly to God. Now, it's interesting, in Narnia, the story ended with them saying that this imaginary version of the world beats the real world. Therefore, we're going to go out and try to find it no matter what. And even if we die trying, it's worth the quest to try to find the sun instead of settling for lamps. And
right, yeah, I think that's the attitude science has. I mean, if sure, the universe could have a creator, and then the mystery stops right there. But it seems like it's onion peel after onion peel, and however long it takes, you're going to get to the center, to the answer. But the thing is there's onion peels. I mean, there's things that you're actually tearing off that are measurable things before you get to a conclusion, rather than, the conclusion to God seems really quick. There are no steps between here and God exists. It's just God exists. It's a pretty simple conclusion to just get to. And it's harder to get to a conclusion where science is just like working and experimenting and be absolutely sure. Can we make predictions based on this information? Is it working for us? Yeah. Whereas again, with God, there's no onion peels to get to God. You can really just get to God by pointing out almost anything that you can see or hear or feel.
To be fair, don't people who deny the existence of God or who seriously question the existence of God, don't you get to the conclusion just as quickly? I mean, is this uniquely a theist problem that we tend to simplify our arguments and just use everything as an evidence for what we already believe? Is that more of a human thing? That doesn't actually tell you what your position is. It just tells you that you have a position.
It's just that it wouldn't fit into the logic of if A is B and then B is C and then A is C. I don't see a B when A is like Earth and then C is God. What would be the B there? What logical reasoning fact is there to stand between A, B, and then B to C?
Yeah. Okay, good. So, there's 3 ways that apologetics try to argue this. There's 3 different branches, and Christians argue with each other about which one of these to use. One is a pure logic, and the Kalam cosmological argument is a type of logical argument. It's saying you don't even really need a world to exist. If I think, therefore I am, is using all logic to reason out to the existence of God. It just says the fact that we can ask the question about whether there is a God, if logic works, then something had to design the logic, even if there's no creation. So that's just a purely logical, philosophical argument.
Wait a minute,
But
though.
doesn't that-
Wouldn't something had to have created the logic creator then? If everything has a creator and everything has a beginning, then it's special
not
pleading
according
at that
to the
point.
cosmological argument. I'm not defending this position. I'm just trying to summarize the position.
Okay.
So yeah, there's an idea that because you can imagine God, it proves that there must be a God, because having an imagination requires an imagination creator. Anyways,
is that really universal though? I mean, for example, so you may be able to argue everyone has even a similar idea of what God is, but when sci-fi movies started coming out with aliens and people started talking about getting abducted, they also had the same description of an alien, but that was because we had a base idea. So don't we already have a base idea of God that everyone just imagines now? I mean, from a long time ago, like 10,000 years ago, and if it was like beaten into humanity, like by killing people who didn't believe, I would imagine a lot has taken place in the human mind since then, since the Bible was brought to us with violence rather than peace, especially in like South America and stuff like that. So,
absolutely. Yeah, the conquistadores. That was not a good. That was not an argument. That was a forced conversion in most of South America.
Right, but it was they were justifying and using Bible verses.
Yes.
And so that
interestingly,
can be justified.
How well do you know the history of? Do you know in 1492 Columbus sailed the ocean blue to this?
Yeah.
Do you know what else happened in 1492? Isabella and Ferdinand, they're known as the Catholic King and Queen of Spain, started to rule. And being a Protestant, I always thought that meant Catholic instead of Protestant. But 1492 is significantly before 1517, when Luther posted the 95 Theses. Catholic meant Catholic instead of Muslim. The Moors had conquered Spain and had ruled for 500 years, and Spain reasserted its independence for the first time in 500 years, and that's at the same time when they discover the New World. It helps me to be a little bit more sympathetic to the way that they did things. Can you imagine if your culture had been conquered 500 years ago and you just regained your independence, and now you become the new conquering culture? I still, what the conquistadores did in South America is terrible, but it helps me understand them to know that they had been the conquered for 500 years until literally the year Columbus accidentally stumbled upon the New World.
Yeah.
Interesting.
But did Spain get conquered, or their gold and silver stolen?
Yeah, they did. Yeah, for 500 years they were under oppression. Again, I'm not defending them. I'm just saying it's fascinating to me historically that so you look at that, and they were defending what they were doing from a Christian standpoint, but arguably there's a really logical cultural explanation for what was going on.
Right, that wouldn't have nothing to do with the Bible. Are you suggesting
Correct.
that it would have happened without the Christian Bible existing?
Yeah, it looks to me like they're using the way that you did persuasion in Spain up until the 1400s for the last 500 years was to get conquered.
Right,
and so
but
now they're going to take the upper hand in the argument.
If ethnic cleansing and conversion were a huge part, then what would you have done that without a Bible?
The Quran or something else, or any ideology.
Yeah, but I mean, again, I would just say if there was no holy books at all, how would these events taken place? Like, how would they have been?
So in our last century, communism did the same thing. Here's one of the things. I don't think this is a uniquely Christian thing. Christians don't have a monopoly on using our ideas to try to take over the world. Isn't everybody doing that? I mean, that's just part of being human, not necessarily being religious.
I think when people, I wouldn't say just ideas, but I mean, if Christianity in even a small way is trying to get a hold of morals and ethics, then your morals and ethics are also the thing guiding you when you're conquering. And
Correct.
your morals and ethics, because you're the winning team, are the correct morals and ethics. You're in a place with subhumans. What did the Bible say about, subhumans? I'm pretty sure it did describe people who were just inferior to others. And so I think that helped the attitude of this is for us to take.
Yeah, and I'm not defending all the things Christians did. I'm just saying that even the Crusades and what happened in South America and all of that, if you take God out of the equation, which they tried to do in communism in the last century, you still get major wars of people conquering others. It's not a distinctly Christian thing to do. I'm just saying that a lot of the arguments of against Christianity, I think, can be universally applied against everyone. So, for instance, back to your idea that Christians want Christianity to be true. Am I right in thinking both of you guys want? You actually kind of you're happy that there's no God. Like the idea that there's not someone who's judging you, controlling you. All those things, that's actually not a bug in your worldview. It's a feature. You like it. It doesn't have to do with the fact of whether or not your worldview is true. It's a bias that you have that we can't tell anything about the truth of someone's worldview because they like their worldview.
I mean, and we've had this discussion before. I remember distinctly saying to you one time, it was during the time when I came to visit you, and we were talking a lot about religion, and I had told you, for the first time in my life since I stopped believing that there was a God, since I was no longer convinced that there was a God, I didn't feel afraid anymore. I didn't feel this existential fear that someone was judging everything I was doing, that there was a chance by some slip up I might accidentally burn in a fiery pit for all eternity. There was this huge sense of relief, like, oh, okay, like I don't have to be afraid of this mob boss overruler anymore. But at the same time, it wasn't because of the desire that I came to that conclusion. I came to that conclusion because of a lack of evidence. And it was just a byproduct of once I stopped believing, I felt this huge sense of relief.
And for me, same. I wouldn't even use the word where it makes you sort of happy that there's no God. I would argue.
It depends on the God, I guess. I'm
exactly.
happy that
I'm
definitely happy there's no Christian God.
Exactly. And I would exactly. I would it would really depend on the God. Of course, I would like someone who has the power to like let you see everyone like you're going to miss later on. But then again, you really have to ask yourself, what are you going to do for all of eternity? Consciously.
Yeah.
And in some doctrines, you actually literally have to pray to God that whole eternity, and you're just like, what the fuck? And so same as Luke, when I just started reading more science content, and you start to value how critical thinking and evidence works together, and where if an idea doesn't work, you just shed it. If you're not going to improve it, you shed it, because experiments, there's not time to just force something that isn't working to work. If there's things that are giving you an obvious pattern of making sense of the world. And so that was one of the things that just wasn't fitting in. What was my purpose for a belief in God? What was I going to use it for? Did I need it? Did I want it? What were other people doing with it? What are they saying because of it? What are they doing because of it? And I just, that was just like a thing where I just thought, that's just extra stuff. Like, it's just extra stuff that I have to bring in invisible evidence to make something work out in my head. And it's like, there's real evidence that you can work with and act upon. And God just wasn't fulfilling any of those things.
But the desire, whether you like the worldview or not, doesn't have to do with whether it's true or not. And that's true for both Christianity and...
Oh, yes. Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
and I agree with you, too. I wanted to say I don't blame world wars necessarily on religion either. I think just religion added on to the destruction of our human nature of wanting to take resources and conquer. I mean that happens in nature all the time, and nature doesn't have a Bible to tell them.
People can use as a reason.
There's a lot of tools.
There's a lot of and that's the thing. Like it's like the devil himself can cite the Bible to his liking. And
Yeah.
so that's what's kind of tricky about that.
And that's what's the contrast for me, though, is that so many people use religion and, of course, other ideologies like communism. They use those things as tools and it's clearly written in the doctrines, like, thou shalt not suffer a witch to live, for instance. Like,
Insinuates for
it's
witches.
really hard to bend that and twist that. It's insinuating that witches exist and that you should not let them live. And of course, uneducated people from like hundreds and hundreds of years ago
10,000 years
took that to mean we got to burn all these ladies who are doing weird stuff.
It's only because they're made out of wood.
Right.
Monty Python?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Um,
Did you get that one, Eddie?
I kind of, but I haven't seen
You
that
have
one in a long time.
remedial Monty Python work to do, not just Narnia.
The one I
It's
have, the one I have down is where he's using the coconuts to ride up to the castle, and then,
yeah. That's
That's the
same
same
movie.
movie.
oh,
Same
really?
movie.
Then I don't know what segment I
They're about
missed.
to burn a witch and they're trying to figure
Is
out.
she made of wood?
Oh,
Throw her in the water. If she floats,
like-
speak wood floats.
that's right. Yes.
And then they start trying to name off other things that float.
A duck. A
And,
duck.
and this
No
guy's
wood.
like, very small rocks. But I think the thing also, so yeah, so it's ideologies, I think, that are the real problem in general. But
Okay, so-
atheism to me it doesn't have any doctrine. It's not really a ideology or a belief system. It's just the answer to one proposition.
Okay, so but are worldviews connected? So how do I say this? Does what you believe about God, how you answer the God question, there's all these facets of what you believe. Does how you answer the God question control or is it influenced by how you answer the science question, the history question, the ethics question?
I would say though, first, before we say how are we answering the God question, why is there a question? Where did that come from?
Well,
What
at least-
evidence do
at
we
the
have to start
very
looking
least,
for it?
Historically, there has been a God question. So
Right, but don't you think after so many years somebody would have answered it while they were answering all these other questions?
Here,
about
hold on.
science?
Just,
Okay.
are you guys down to do another 20 minutes?
I can
I'm
do
down,
another
Micah.
20
I'm
minutes.
down. Yes.
Okay.
all right, let's
Yes.
do it.
Let me
I'm
just-
having fun. This
Yeah,
is a
Let
good
me
conversation.
restart the camera one more time.
Whoop whoop. Micah.
So,
Okay.
from being the biggest fan of the Millennial experience, I noticed that it seems like of the different sciences, they used to call these all sciences. I think when you guys use the word science, you mean
Knowledge.
science.
I mean knowledge.
Yeah, the scientific
But the
method.
branch,
I mean
the branch of
just
study, yeah.
The Greek basis for the word science, ciencia,
But I don't.
knowledge.
Would you call politics and ethics a science? Originally, they called these all sciences, and they called them philosophy a science, religion a science,
Typically, whenever I mean science,
math a
it's
science.
whenever I'm saying science and I'm putting it to a topic, it's a topic that can be measured, whether weight, numbers, pressure.
Something
So
that
then
there's a lot of
history isn't-
evidence
Yeah.
for.
Yeah,
But
something that
is
you can
his-
measure it.
But is history a science? Because it's sort of. I mean, it's a way of knowing. So, on one definition, or the courtroom method, where you ask witnesses what they saw to figure out what happened in the past.
I don't know. I think eyewitness account is one of the lowest forms of evidence in a courtroom.
It is.
Yeah. So I don't know.
It's historically been the thing that has been the difference between whether
Right,
people
but
are
I
Shouldn't
think
have
I
been,
think it's
though.
because we just didn't have good,
Very
we didn't
unreliable.
have good tools because I mean seriously, whoever saw the Virgin Mary, that was in
Like
fucking Mexico.
DNA evidence.
Does that affect anyone in England? I mean, no.
DNA evidence is more what we were meaning by science. It's like something that is very easily measurable, testable, and repeatable. But
So you wanna hear
eyewitness
something-
accounts are not.
You want to hear something trippy?
Yes.
I just was we were studying the 10 Commandments this summer and talking about murder, and so I was like, I'm going to find the first murder in the Bible, and it's Cain killing Abel. There's no witnesses, and what God says to Cain to convict him is Abel's blood is crying out from the ground. He didn't mean that his blood was talking. The very first murder ever recorded in the Bible was solved with forensic evidence. Isn't
Yeah.
that
Did they use forensic evidence anywhere else though in the Bible after that?
Yes. Yeah. There were ways, admissible evidence in a court of law included physical objects and evidence. In the Old Testament law, there were times when it would, if you find this, you can tell that somebody did it. If they have the stuff with them that they stole, then it's evidence that they're the thief.
And do you think they would have applied that to the existence of the God that they were believing in?
I don't know, but I'm just saying that this is my point with all of this. Am I right that the historical method, which includes listening to witnesses who have written stuff down, is probably, you guys would say, one of the lowest, the least conclusive ways of knowing something to be true?
I think if you're looking for historical evidence, you are really stuck with almost the only way, like newspaper articles from that time or something written.
Yeah, and the closer it is to now, the easier that it is.
But the further back you go, you have to be really sure, because you're just making crazy guesses. Like way more than science would ever make. For instance,
I don't know if you've heard the story about George Washington. He filled his teeth with other people's, anytime he lost a tooth, he would get a tooth from a slave and put it in his own mouth. So he was, there's some historical documents saying that he would pay them for their teeth. There's some that say he would take them from his slaves, things like that. But it's like that stuff.
Who can you believe in the end? Yeah.
Either way, that stuff may or may not have gone this way or that way. It's already pretty muddy what he did, but it also isn't a matter of changing the entire perspective of the universe, how it was created. It really doesn't change much about our lives. Once you go thousands of years before that, and there's even muddier evidence than we have for some of the details about George Washington's life, making claims like someone walked on water or raised people from the dead or, created the universe, it starts to become this. It is a matter of changing everything we know about science, and it becomes a lot less reliable, particularly with eyewitness accounts. No video footage, no photos, no extra biblical testimonies.
Your millennialism is showing.
How so?
You require a video evidence, or it didn't happen.
I mean, it would help.
I think
God would have just given them a video camera.
Yeah, and I'll just give an example of how even bad a video camera is. Rodney King in 1992. There was video of that, and yet it was translated.
Right.
Resisting
arrest, and look at that. So this is how imperfect human minds can be.
Well, what about deep fakes? Like we've got there's going to become a time where video evidence of something is going to be worse than someone was like, dude, I was there. He didn't say that.
And you're right. But video evidence would be nice now, but also it's not my job to tell God what kind of evidence people require in order to believe in him. Like if his whole goal is to have everyone believe in him and go to heaven, first of all, he could just make everybody go to heaven. Like snap his fingers, everyone's in heaven. What's the point of earth anyway? But also, he knows what kind of evidence we require on an individual basis. So if God really wanted me to believe in him, he could just show me like that.
But faith is way more valuable.
But faith doesn't matter.
I think we have different definitions of faith, because I think this is another thing I wanted to ask you guys about from your last. So to summarize, I think I'm right in saying it's fair to say that you guys would trust the scientific method as a much more accurate way of telling what's true than the historical method.
I would say this instead, close to what you just said. I would say I don't use faith in any aspect of my life. So to create a thing where I'm having to go and use faith, I don't see
So the definition of faith, the way you just used it, I don't think I use faith for anything either, if what you are saying is true.
Well, the biblical definition of faith is the evidence for things unseen.
I'm pretty sure the highest crime is not believing.
So, okay, but what is believing? And even that verse from Hebrews 11, it says that faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things unseen.
Is it wishful thinking too?
No. So here's what my definition of faith would be, and that is an inference from current facts in the past and the present that enable you to make a decision in the
About-
present and the future
Are these facts
based
assumed, though?
on yes. Okay, so let me give you an example of what my definition of faith is. You're standing at a street and you look both directions and you see cars far enough away. You know that the speed limit on that street is 45. They look like they're far enough away. As long as they're following the speed limit, you have enough time to get from side A to side B of the street. You know that you're probably not going to break an ankle in the middle of the road, and you factor all that in.
Mm-hmm.
That's evidence, and you can be right or wrong about the evidence, but your decision to cross the street or stay on your side of the street is a probabilistic decision that you say, yeah, I've probably got a 99% chance of getting across this street safely, so I'm going to go for it. That's faith. You have to make a choice based on the facts in the present and the past as you best understand them.
But
for
you
what
can
you're going to do in the
Yeah,
present
but
or
you
the
can see
future.
if
You
the
see the
cars are
cars,
evidence
you
there.
see
Yeah,
the
you see
road.
the cars and you see the road. So in this case, God, where would you apply him to apply into your critical thinking?
But I don't see an airplane engine that could be falling. People have actually been hit by debris falling from the sky. Like, there's lots of variables that you don't know. I'm just saying
But that could happen. Though.
We've seen
debris
that
does
people
fall.
have been hit by those.
Yeah,
Though.
and we know that there is even a non-zero chance of that happening. But what we mean is all your examples are using things you can see and assume have happened and in fact have happened. But
so you
God,
could argue
but God
that
isn't
I
a
shouldn't
God isn't
cross
a
the street. But my definition of faith, you can argue whether it's reasonable for me to cross the street or not. But that decision, based on what you're going to do in the present and the future, based on what you know from the past and the present, is what I mean by faith. So even going back to that Hebrews verse, that the substance of things hoped for, it's making a decision, there may only be an 80% chance that you can cross the street safely in a given situation, but 100% of you either has to cross the street or stay on your side of the street. You have to weigh the probability, and then you act as though that thing is true. And that's what I believe faith is.
Acting
that
as
case-
though it was true, then you're assuming that you don't know it's absolutely true.
But no, I think in that case, you and I at least agree
Right.
on our definition of when we use the word faith in layman's terms, what we
Right.
mean by faith. I don't think that version of faith applies to God.
yeah, I think
because-
it's more of a
I
logical
do.
calculation that you're making
So how
yeah.
if
because you can see the cars.
like
and
we
their
said,
speed.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Because
So
in
I-
my
logical pieces.
normal use
I
of
have
the
a
word
higher
faith,
view of history. So
Okay.
can I just tell you that's why I pushed that point, is that there are three ways that Christians argue. One is straight logic, which we've been talking about. I'm not super it's not that I'm unconvinced by purely philosophical arguments for God. I think I don't disagree with them. But I'm not going to start there because it's not why I believe in God. Another one is called evidentialism, which says basically that if we're playing hide and go seek with God, he's going to win. The only way, if there is a God and we're going to find out about him, he has to poke his head out and say peekaboo. Otherwise, finite creatures in an infinite universe are not going to find God on their own. So, therefore, the only way to go about looking for God is to expect that God wants to be found and ask the question, has anyone ever claimed to have found God? Now this becomes a historical question rather than a philosophical question, and you look for historical evidence. I would look for historical evidence more than scientific evidence. Just like you guys. I'm talking to you guys right now.
Right.
Eddie, I believe that you really have brothers. Even though I've never seen them, I've never touched them, and if I demanded right now that I won't believe in your brothers unless you show them to me, you probably couldn't
I can show you a
get
picture of
them
them.
here.
Yeah.
But
that's not them.
Isn't that similar to saying that, it seems like there's probably aliens that visit us and abduct people.
Right.
And terrestrial animals can't see them, but they're here.
And the only way for them to show us is if they pop out and go peekaboo. And so
Right.
what we need to do is look historically into people who have
Yeah.
said they've been abducted by aliens.
Can you come up with a better idea for right now, with what we know scientifically, to determine whether there's a good chance there are aliens or not, other than using the historical method of talking to people who think that they've seen aliens.
No, the only example there is for intelligent life having visited or not is the same. Okay, an example would be if you go to the ocean and I have a cup of water and I scoop out of the ocean and I look through and I say there must not be whales in the ocean. I don't see any whales. We
Right.
have barely just gotten out of our own solar system,
And
we have a
can-
lot to look for, and God is not within the solar system.
And we
by
can
the way.
determine the probability of life
He's gotta be further
because
away.
we have it here. We have examples of
Right,
life
right.
here. We can determine the probability of life in the universe, and then we can apply that statistic to the size of the universe,
Right.
to the other planets that we can see and measure
And that would be
and
math,
observe.
and that would be a mathematical,
Right.
So
philosophical
we have
point.
the things to plug into the probability equation. When you're asking about God, even if you were asking about aliens, that's still life in this universe that
Right.
we can see.
that grew
Right.
from
It
the
would
universe
still
and
be
wasn't
natural. It would still
created.
exist here. But when you take a question like God and you say, well, he's not really part of this universe, but he's
He
outside
exists in
of
the
it,
fifth
and he
dimension.
created it, and he's also in it.
Then how do we know?
You can't
Yeah.
test it. You can't measure it in the ways that we could with aliens. You know, we could get some kind of probability for extraterrestrial life. We can't get any kind of probability for God. There's no numbers to plug into the equation.
So there is in one thing. So what you guys are doing is inference to the existence of something similar to us based on the existence of us, right?
But the Bible states he created us in his image. So I
Right,
think we have
right.
some clues as to what he might look like.
So aliens inference for let's use your example of aliens.
Mhm.
There you don't think that there's solid evidence. There's not an alien that we know for sure is an alien on Earth right now. We can just go look at them using the scientific method of reproducibility. Take us to your planet, show us where you live.
Or that their
Um,
DNA doesn't have human origins.
But you're saying there's a pretty good chance, based on the size of the universe and the fact that there's life here, there's probably other planets that are similar to ours, and if life developed here, then life developed there. There's a pretty good chance that there are aliens somewhere, even if we can't
Yeah,
find
I'm gonna say there's a non-zero probability
Yeah.
because
Good.
we just can't be out
non-zero.
there.
There's
We-
a
yeah.
chance.
Good. But that's not proof whether they do exist or not.
No,
That's just-
absolutely not. It's just philosophical precedence. That's all it is.
Okay, so then from there, you could say we also have a historical thing where people have said they've seen aliens, and they could either be right or wrong, and that doesn't actually, if they're all wrong, if all the people on Earth who claim that they have interacted with an alien are wrong,
Mhm.
it still doesn't prove that there aren't aliens. It
No,
just
no.
means that
It just
the
means
alien-
that
the
either
people-
hallucination.
And
the
it
people
proves
who
that
just,
I don't have any kind of justified reason to believe them yet.
Right.
Right now, I
'Cause
I
they
should
still
still
haven't
be saying
demonstrated
I
it.
don't know.
Yeah, so if they say that they got abducted, I'm still gonna say, well, did you take anything from the ship? Like, can you tell
Right.
me anything else? Like, did they leave a trace
And I'm
of
not
their
going to
spit on you?
believe it or
Yeah.
go out and shout it from the rooftops until I've seen
Right.
for,
And
for
nor
sure.
would there be a good reason to just believe them either.
Correct. And I agree with everything you've just said. I just have. Let me tell you my story just a little bit. When I was 18, a friend of mine who was working with me at a Christian camp the year before became an atheist, sent an email to everyone he knew, and declared his atheism, gave a link to. You guys know who Dan Barker is of the. He's the head of some big.
The
it
ACA or
Yeah, one of the big Freedom from Religion Foundation.
Oh, yeah,
one
yeah.
of those guys. He was a pastor and he stopped being a Christian, and he sent this link to a book and said, if you want to talk about this, I want you to read this and then we can talk, and gave a couple other challenges. And at the end of the email, he called me out by name. So he sends this email to like 500 people, and he lists like 3 people at the end of it that he like called out to all of his friends. And so it was this big moment for me that I had to answer. My life changed from that point forward. I realized that if I am going to continue to believe in God, put my faith in Jesus as not only as creator, but as the one who's going to save me, I need evidence for it. I became an evidentialist from that point. And I have studied, and I do think that there is good evidence that the documents haven't changed significantly. There are places in the Bible where we don't know what the words are, and in 100% of places in modern Bible translations, there's a footnote on the page that says what we think the other word is. And so no one's like keeping that a secret. There's no big conspiracy to hide what is changed in the Bible. It's literally there every time it is right at the bottom of the page. So I've looked at things, evidence, but I have a higher value of historical evidence. I'm an evidentialist, apologetically, that I'm going to look for historical evidence of whether or not a God exists, rather than reproducible scientific evidence. Just like I can't ask for that to believe that Eddie has siblings.
Right.
I have to take your word for it.
Oh, word. But at any instance, I mean, the tests can be made and the proof be provided.
Yeah.
He can,
And
Absolutely.
which is a difference
he
between.
can just bring his brothers. And
Yeah,
Yes.
which is
show
a
you.
huge
Yeah.
difference between saying, "Oh, you have a God, I don't believe you," and then you go, "Well, oh God," and then he just fucking lightning bolts
like,
down
"What's
here, and he's
up?"
like, "What's up?" And
But
so
if that
that's the
happened,
difference.
would you really believe if all of a sudden God showed up right now? Wouldn't you be more likely to say, "Wow, that was quite a trip"?
I
Probably
mean-
question about the cancer and stuff, all the war.
But that's why I was saying God would know what it would take to convince me
yeah.
to make it to.
Yeah.
If
which is
he
why
exists,
faith, I
he
think,
would
is
know how to
which is
convince
why I
me.
use the word faith the way I do, because he can convince us, and yet wants us to play this trick of like, find me and believe in me,
But
whether
no
you
evidence.
don't see me
But
or not.
do you know why parents play hide and go seek with their kids? Is it because they don't want to be found, or is it because they do want to be
I
found?
thought it was just a play.
Eventually, they come out though. After
do, yeah.
after a while, they come out, and then they're there all the time. And they physically
Not
feed
right now.
you and clothe you.
I'm in a different house than my kids, and I'm doing a podcast. They're not here with me. How do they know I exist? I'm just saying all claims to use Bertrand Russell's argument that miracles can't happen because I've never seen one happen. That I would hope, and maybe this isn't true. I'm going to make a claim that I could be wrong about, but I would hope that I'm open to the idea of things, that each individual weird claim that someone makes, I would have to say, I'd have to test that one individually. Like, I can't write off weird claims just because I've never seen that happen before, therefore that never happens.
Yeah, same here. For sure.
So that is why I'm an evidentialist.
And I think
Again,
that's why it's so much
Yeah.
fun to talk about these things with you, as opposed to the people that just go, well, look at the trees, they're so complex.
They are definitely complex, which is why a lot of people don't know how
But
it
we
works.
know why they're complex. We can trace back exactly
Yeah.
what makes them complex.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we've just got a couple minutes left. And this video is going to get too long to start processing on my computer.
We can continue next week.
Okay.
But
This has been a
I
great
think
conversation.
Yeah, I motherfucking have had a lot of fun today.
I wanted to get into if there was something you had mentioned specifically about our last podcast.
Yeah.
Oh, I had a question I wanted to leave you with in case we don't have much time. But
Yeah.
what do you think your teaching would be, minus that there's a God hanging around? Do you think you could get the message through?
Wait.
Like, would I still be a?
No. You would still be doing what you're doing, but can you teach the supposed behaviors that we want to get out of religion without even mentioning a God, or do they have to be there when you teach this?
Yeah, I wouldn't. I know that there are people who have morals that I agree with that don't believe in God, and I'm grateful for that. But I think that if I were to become an atheist, I would no longer be a moral person.
Don't be an atheist. No, don't be an atheist. Have total faith. But
Right.
what I mean is that God wouldn't be this thing that everyone's always falling back on, and rather they think of their behavior as their own, not who's whispering in my ear.
I still think that I'm not sure I see the subjective response. I still, when I hear you talk about religion and faith, I still hear you thinking of it as something that people use. For me, religion and my faith in God is primarily a question of what is true, and then what you do comes out of that, rather than saying, I have this behavioral goal for people and I can use God to get them there. That's just not how I view religion. That's not how I view God. It's either true or it's not, and if if it's true,
Right. So
the
so
morality follows
then,
it.
so then, where would you say God fits in someone's good or bad decision? At what point did he make a move there with a person?
I think God made people with an ability to choose between right and wrong, and we have. You can see how that went for us.
Yeah, because it almost seems as
Thanks a lot, God.
Yeah, because it seems like the gods we believe in are the ones without free will, which is why you see them sit around and watch things happen.
Yeah.
So
No, I don't know. I still think that's a piece that we haven't teased out enough. I'm not sure. I think I was able to summarize what my view of faith is. I'm not sure that I convinced you of it, and because of that, I'm not sure I can answer the question.
No,
with a
yeah,
different
because
view of what
I
faith
think
is.
I think you did answer it. The only reason I didn't say anything was because I still think that faith remains strongly based on things you don't use logic with and you don't reason through. You really are, through your own feeling of thinking it's true, believe it.
And I think that's true for a lot of people, but I think that's true for religious people and non-religious people, that we're not very logical people. All people.
for
are
the
not
most
very
part.
logical.
Yeah, I think if you don't have the tools or mathematics,
All
you're
right,
not going to be able to
We
do
have
that.
60 seconds left. This
What was the last thing you wanted to ask about, Luke?
No, we don't have time. So
Just cue it
this-
up for next time.
This was really awesome.
Yeah, I have fucking
I
this
think
is
what
awesome.
we should do, if it's okay with you, if you're interested, we should turn this into kind of like a playlist or a series.
Yeah, let's do
Oh
it.
yeah, that'd be a
And
lot of fun. Yeah.
Maybe we take turns coming up with a topic to discuss, like something that you would be curious about our opinions on,
We'll
or
start
vice
with Genesis,
versa.
Mike.
Yeah.
We'll just
I
work
preached
our
through
way
it 2
through the
years
whole
ago.
Bible.
I'm so happy I went to church in my youth because
Yeah.
I would not have no knowledge of the Bible right now. What's
What
up?
kind of church did you go to?
Oh, I was a Jehovah's Witness, so we were very adamant Bible students. Everything was just straight out of the Bible.
But
Cool, we'll have to talk about that.
yeah, with that being said, thanks so much for
Thanks,
doing this
Micah.
with
Yeah,
us. It
this
was
was
great to
fucking
have
fun,
you.
man. Hell yeah.
This is great. Yeah,
Yeah.
we'll have to do this again. Good to meet you again in person.
Yeah.
Well,
Micah,
not
fuck
really, but
And here, I'm going to cut the feed to the recording. Thanks, everybody, for listening.
Thanks, everyone.
thank you.
Found